Timelines and graphics are a great way to add visuals to your story and to draw readers in. We know that we are visually wired, right? That 50% of your brain is involved in visual processing, 70% of your sensory receptors are in your eyes, and that we observe a visual scene and comprehend it very quickly. So this in itself, of course, is a visual, and it conveys information quickly. What we really need in this, and this is from a Stratcom company, is to make sure that it's got all the elements, right? So it's got a headline. It tells you what we're going to be looking for, what this chart is going to be telling you. A few words, not full sentences, just a very quick way to consume the information. And what's really the most important is the credibility of the information that you're conveying. So in this case, it uses sort of footnotes, which is not necessarily my first choice, but usually we put a source line at the bottom, which I'll tell you more about. But just giving the readers information about the source of the data. This is really important because your job is to find credible data and credible information, and then to be transparent with your audience. So normally we would add a source line at the bottom, where you just say something like sources of data and then list them. Also, we would add a credit line, right? So your name, so that we know you created this visual, which A, gives you the responsibility of that, but also it goes to your credit in terms of what you can do. So effective graphics come in, I put them into sort of these three categories, right? Credible information is critical. It needs to be concise, again, those short words. And so concise, it needs to be concise, those short words, and it needs to be easy to read, right? It's like we need to be able to look at it and sort of quickly understand what this is going to give me. So numbers lend themselves well to a graphic. Information or words where we might have a list of something. Location can be another way, like if we need a map, or something where we're going to explain the time it took for something to transpire. So numbers and charts, we love numbers to see them in this quick way, but we can do it poorly, right? So pie charts, bar charts, line charts can be effective, but these are way too complex. I mean, if you've got to have this many slices to a pie and you can't quickly determine what it is, while this might be appropriate for even, say, a textbook or a different kind of report, it is not as helpful in our quick world of media consumption. So we, to make things sort of quick and easy to understand, we do a couple of things, right? So first of all, we have a description of what is in this chart, percent of African Americans saying they've personally experienced racial discrimination. We have labels so that we know what each bar represents. And oftentimes we'll put the percentage out here or the number out here so we can also quickly read that without having to draw a line from here to there. Our axis is easy to read. And again, we come to the sources, right? So the source, NPR, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, Harvard, T.H. Chan School of Public Health, etc. And then in the story, what we do is we can just be sort of general about it, right? So the more information in the chart, but in the story, we have something that gives a sense of that. So almost all Black people who responded, 92%, said they felt discrimination against African Americans exists in America today. At least half said that they had personally experienced racial discrimination. So you see that we do have one number in here, giving you some credibility and specifics. And then we say at least half, without saying 53% or 56%. So let's take a look at this. This is not journalism. This is actually from a government website. But this is an entire paragraph of numbers. Now, if there were just two numbers, we could maybe live with that, although I don't know how to sort of put in context these big numbers like that. But look at how many numbers there are. This is not an effective way to convey numbers. I even forgot one here. There are so many of them. And we don't really know what those numbers mean. I mean, it's like looking at a spreadsheet in words. So this is the numbers displayed, but even still, there's a question about the credibility of this chart because of the way it's organized. So what does this mean? It says arrest and conviction data for selected offenses associated with illegal criminal aliens. And this is from the Texas let's go back, Texas Department of Public Safety, and then they use these numbers from Homeland Security, right? So that's how they say they got these numbers. So let's take a look at this. So weapons, 2976 and 1282. This says arrests, this says convictions. So what does that actually mean, right? Is this like a total number? Is this a part of this? It's not very clear. And even more troublesome is when we get down to this, is because these are very big numbers. So let's look at this one, all other offenses. 168,000, 62,000, all other offenses. What does that actually mean? What's in this category? Does this include, in fact, traffic stops? I suspect that it does, actually. So it goes from having crimes that might be considered serious to here's a whole bunch. In fact, the bulk of the number comes from this line, and in fact, we have no idea what it is. Here's another graphic. Visually pleasing upon first appearance, but what do these numbers actually mean? And does it make sense to have them sort of staggered out of order? Infographics, I like to put in the category of, if you need to define some terms, if you need to list out the rules for how something happens or a process where something happens, or some simple instructions. It's a way to provide this basic, quick information where this is what this concept is that I'm writing about in my story. And sometimes we use tools like Piktochart or Canva. This is not so bad, right? This seems fairly simple, but this long chart, too complex, and when you're looking at something like this online, you cannot consume all of this in an easy computer screen. So finding another way to do that or breaking it into pieces can be helpful. Maps are perfect for locations, of course, when location matters, and location often matters. There's a tool called StoryMap that lets you put plots on a map and then even sort of explain a little more visually here. So it can be a very compelling storytelling tool. You can also just use Google Maps. So Google My Maps gives you a way to plot an item on a map. Here's all the items, and then you can actually embed content in each one of these markers, right? So a photo or a video, some text, and then you can embed the entire map. Very easy way to follow, so there's lots of tutorials on that. Timelines, of course, this makes sense, right? So over a space of time. This is a timeline. Obviously, it's sort of an artistic rendition, but time often matters. So Timeline.js, which is akin to the story map. These are free tools from the Knight Lab. So this is a very easy and useful way to create a timeline. You've seen timelines potentially in the University Star and other publications. This was when Connor Clegg left, right, the student body president. So we've got a number of different screens with some images, some text, even you can even embed like the statement from the president. So that can be a helpful way to tell something happened, a story over time. This is what it looks like when you create the timeline. It's basically a Google spreadsheet, and you just add in each of these fields the date, a URL to your visuals, some text for the captions, that sort of thing. So again, fairly easy. Sometimes we use other tools like Canva or Piktochart for a timeline. And so this is a balloon accident, and it's telling you like over the years, here were these balloon accidents. This is telling you a minute by minute, because sometimes we look at something over decades, centuries even, and sometimes we're just looking at the minutes that it took for something to happen. A vertical timeline here where we've got a little bit of information in the order that things happened. Oftentimes we like it to be simple, right? So the story would explain more what this timeline means, right? What we often do when we're really in a hurry is we just create this timeline with number markers. So this is the Pulse nightclub shooting, and maps were very helpful. So there were these sort of renderings of what the building looked like inside, and then there were times for this is when this happened, this is when this happened. And so in your reporting, sometimes it's important for you to keep track of the time or to get those from official sources. I hope that you'll take a minute to look at Helen's first year. So this is a really nice visual that employs a number of these tools as we look at a child who was born to refugees. So visuals, graphics, timelines, all of these things really help the reader along and can bring them into your story.